Hey, welcome back to my kitchen table. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile upon you, be gracious to you. May the Lord show his favor and give you his peace. The last time we were together, I told you about a thing that I have on my desktop, and I want to just kind of read it to you here. It says, "Wow, after all the hurts, the scars, and bruises, after all of those trials, I really made it through. I did it. With God's grace, I survived. That which was supposed to kill me, that which was supposed to make me give up on my God. So I straighten up my crown and I walk away like I'm the boss. And today, you can say I walk away like I'm a picker." This chapter 13 is called "You Are a Survivor." You are a survivor. And everything that I cover in the whole book, this chapter 13 begins to kind of bring it all together, in that you made it. You're not the person you were. You're a new creature in God. That's what the Bible says. You've been now made a new creature in the Lord. You have been adopted into his family. You are now his daughter. You are now his child. And because of that, you can cry, "Abba, Father." And here's the thing. Okay, in the English language, the sound, a constant sound that is heard the most, or the sound that is heard the most in our words, is the D sound, duh. If you're from the South, the duh sound is also written TH, because we put the duh on about everything. But in English language, duh is the most prominent sound. And there's an old wise tale that says that if a baby says daddy first, that the next child is going to be a boy. If it says mama first, the next child will be a girl. Well, I just want to tell you real quickly that because that we say the sound duh more, when our children are beginning to learn to talk, they mimic what they hear, and that is that duh sound. And so they're going duh, 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 and everybody's going, "Oh, he's saying daddy, 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 daddy." No, he's just making a duh sound. In Hebrew, ah is the most prominent sound. And so whenever a little baby is learning how to speak Hebrew in a Hebrew home, the sound that it says hears the most is ah, Abba, 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 our Father, Father. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And so whenever we begin to look at this and we understand that now we're his child, we've been grafted in, and we're no longer the person we used to be. Our past no longer has a hold on us, but now we're moving forward in God. And we're allowing him to take us and make us into a new creature in his image, to be his child. And so whenever we look at this chapter 13, it begins to bring all of that stuff together, and it begins to say, here's how, all of the bad stuff, we're done with it. But here's how we begin to make ourselves a new creature. Two major steps that we begin to do. And I cover these in the book. And there was a story that I share in the book, You Are a Picker. And it happened several years ago. Our son was about 10 years old, I guess. Kramer was about 10 years old. Our youngest daughter, Cassia, was about 2. And there was a friend of ours who had asked us to go to work for him in a business, and we went to work for him in this business, and we were working for him, and I had been working for him, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, whatever. And all of a sudden things went south real fast, really fast. And he owed me $1,634.32 in cash money. And we were about to move. I had some bills I needed to pay. We were counting on that money. And he's like, "Well, I can't pay you until next day." And so next day arrived, and I was hoping he was going to pay us, and he hadn't heard. And finally, my mom called and said, "Hey, so-and-so just left the house, and he left an envelope here." So I'm thinking, okay, man, here we go. We're fixing to go get our money. And I went by there, thinking I was going to get a check for $1,634.32, but instead it was a very nasty letter and a check for $40. Now, I don't know about you, but I would have rather him not give me anything than to have given me a $40 check. We were packing to move that night. We were moving that night. We had it all timed out so that, I was picking up the moving truck whenever my mom called me. And so we went by there and seen what it was, and we're driving home. And as we're driving home, my wife, Mama, starts crying. And whenever she starts crying, I know we got trouble. She is so mad whenever she starts crying. And so I thought, oh man, we really got some problems here, because she was crying, and she said, I want to crush him. And the Spirit of God sparked inside of me, and I looked at her and said, don't say it unless you mean it. She goes, I mean it. I want to crush him. I said, okay. We have had a distant family. Eddie's gone on to be with the Lord now, but we had a distant family member who was an attorney. And so I said, all right, what we'll do then is we're going to go by Eddie's office. We'll take this $40 check, and we'll have Eddie to mail this check to him and write him a little saying that your debt is paid in full. Well, then she really started crying. There was no longer molar dust coming out her ears, but now the tears were really flowing. And in the process of it, we went by. Eddie was about to go home. He stopped, and I gave him the check, and he said, it's all right, not a problem, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. And sure enough, he went ahead and went on his way. And we went ahead and we started doing what we was going to do, packing up the truck. The very first step in your road to recovery is forgiveness. Now, I know you're going to sit there and say, preach, you don't have any idea what they did to me, and I do not have any idea how bad you were hurt or how many times you were hurt, and I have no idea how many different people hurt you. I will tell you this, my little story pales in comparison to what you went through. What you went through cannot hold a candle from what my little story was I just told you. I was just telling you what had to happen. So I'm loading the truck. We loaded the truck all night long. We started before dark, and all night long I was picking up boxes, taking them outside and putting them on the truck. And as I would take them out and put them on the truck, I would be saying, he set me free, yes, he set me free. He broke the bonds of prison for me. I don't know if Eddie's written that letter yet. And I'd go back in the house, I don't know if Eddie's wrote, he hadn't had time to write that letter yet. I'm going to call him first thing Monday morning, and I'll tell him forget about it. We're going to sue him. No. I'm going to forgive him. He set me free, yes, he set me free. He broke the bonds of prison for me. I don't know if Eddie wrote the letter yet. And I loaded half of that truck in forgiveness and half of that truck, and I'm going to sue his hind end. And we're going to take him as far as I can. We done this all night long. I loaded that truck like that. We got the truck loaded, got everything done. We got in the truck, started driving off. Got down the road, got to the place where we were moving to. It was several miles. We had to drive about 3 or 4 hours. I hadn't slept all night. Part of the trip I don't even remember. I had my eyes wide open going down the road, but I was asleep. I didn't remember. We got there, and as soon as we got there, we backed the truck up to the door. We unhooked the trailer that had the car on it. We backed up to the door and went in the house and laid down on the floor and went to sleep. We were just dead tired. And a little bit later, after a couple hours of sleep, somebody knocked on the door and woke us up. Like, hey, we're going to help you unload. And I'm like, man, I'm not even getting started. And just told them, we just got here. I've been loading and driving all night. Not a problem, Pastor, we'll be back later. Well, but then I'm awake. And so we start unloading. And guess what? I unloaded that truck the same way I loaded that truck. Half of it was unloaded and I'm going to forgive him, and the other half was unloaded in Eddie hadn't written that letter yet, and I'm suing him. As I continued to do this all night long, or all day long, something began to go through my mind, and over the next few days, I began to put some things together. And one of the things that I found out about forgiveness is it doesn't come easy. I didn't lose my place. I just want you to think about that. It does not come easy. It does not come easy. Forgiveness is something you have to make yourself do. You need to grab a hold of that, because forgiveness is something you have to make yourself do. And I understand that you have a legitimate complaint. You have a legitimate claim that they may have ruined your life up until now. They may have put you through hell because of the abuse, because of the whatever they did. You were a young lady. You did not deserve it. You were a victim. I don't care if they try to convince you that you wanted this to happen. You cannot control your body whenever stimulation happens. You know, even if you had, for example, if you had an orgasm, oh, looky there, you enjoyed this. No, I didn't want this to happen. You stimulated a certain place, and my body reacted, but I still did not want this to happen. I didn't want you to do this to me. You are the victim. You are the victim, and don't you forget that. You are the victim. Now let me move on. You had this legitimate complaint that they ruined your life. But here again, just like we looked at in the last video, don't let their actions in your past dictate your actions in your future. And one of the ways that you can start your survival is to forgive them. And it's something you have to make yourself do. Again, I go back to in our drug and alcohol program, one of the things is I have to deal with the sin that was committed. Until I deal with the sin in my life, I cannot, I will struggle with my addiction. The sin is not sin you have committed in every case, but the sin is things that were committed, or sin that was committed against you. And so until you deal with the way that others treated you and the way that they abused you or the way that they raped you or whatever happened, until you deal with that sin, you're still going to have struggles with your addiction and everything else, because that's the foundation of your stronghold. Remember in a couple of videos back with the little Legos and doll and all of that? You still have to go back and look and see that that's where the foundation is. And you have to pull up the foundation. You see, when a foundation is laid, they dig down to bedrock if they can. And they begin to build on the solidness of bedrock. The reason they do that is because if you don't do that, when the rain comes and the mud begins to settle and the ground gets weak, your house will begin to, part of it will begin to sink a little bit, part of it will not, and your foundation will break. If you got a solid concrete floor, your floor will begin to bust and buckle and all of that. Besides, Jesus said that a wise man builds his house upon the rock. So, here's what happened. Satan began to go down to a rock, and he started building his foundation for your stronghold on that rock that you were abused, or that rock that you were raped, or that rock where whatever happened to you happened. And whenever that he built that foundation, in order for you to grow past it, you have to pull up that foundation of your stronghold, or it's going to continue to give you problems. It'll continue to affect you in your life. Continue to affect you in your life until you deal with that sin, until you take care of it and understand this is not going to dictate my future. It might have happened, but it's not going to dictate my future. And if you can't forgive, you can't pull up the stronghold. I know I pulled out about a foot of nerve and stepped on it. because I don't know the hurt that they caused you. I don't know the pain that they caused you. I don't know the family members that it cost you just to be. Maybe it put you into a personal hell because you were unable to even say anything because everybody's saying, don't say anything because of what will it do to the family. I don't care what it does to the family. I don't care what it does to the family tomorrow. It puts you in a prison. It may be of your own making, but it puts you in a prison. And here again, the first step is beginning to make yourself forgive. One of the ways that you can make yourself forgive is moving on to this, what I call the step 2, and that is start to tell your story. Start to share your story with someone else. Start with, it needs to be someone you can trust. Someone you know is not going to misquote you, take you out of context, and use it against you whenever the time comes and it makes them feel good. Someone who's going to keep their mouth shut until you're ready for your story to be out. Someone who's going to try to love you regardless of what happened. A lot of times it's another female. Sometimes it is a male. Sometimes it is a friend of either sex that you feel comfortable enough. Maybe it's your counselor there, wherever that you're at. Maybe it's a counselor. Maybe it's a doctor, whatever, psychologist. Whatever it is, it's somebody that you can begin to have some confidence that they are not going to use and abuse and re-abuse you over what happened. And as you begin to tell your story, the first time, it's going to help lighten the load just a little bit. And as you continue to tell your story, it'll help lighten it more and a little more and a little more and a little more. And as you continue to tell your story, all of a sudden you come to the point one day where your story is no longer a weight that holds you back, but your story is now something that you use to minister to others. Now, God has given me an ability to kind of spot a lot of abused women. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I just cannot. I don't have any idea. And I preach or I share something and all of a sudden eyeballs start tearing up and black streak starts running down their face and all of these things. And I had no idea. Sometimes I have an idea that this is something bad has happened, but I may not know the severity of what happened. I understand something may have taken place. I had a lady one time, I knew there was something bad. I get a sense in my spirit, I knew something was bad. I didn't know what. I just knew something was bad. And I found out later that as a young girl, her mom was selling her as a prostitute to her friends and to her clients. And I didn't know the severity. I knew something was here, but I just didn't know the severity. So I can a lot of times spot somebody, but sometimes I can't. But because you've walked through it and you know the signs and you know the symbols and you know the body language and you can spot someone. And there's something about walking through a valley with someone when you've walked through that valley before that brings some comfort to them. When I was a young man, our oldest daughter, Casey, was 19 days old whenever she passed away. She had a genetic defect. She had what's called trisomy 13. Trisomy 28 is Down syndrome. So she had 1/13 chromosome too many, which affects circulatory, respiratory, vision, hearing. Life expectancy is less than a month. Most, I think it's like 70-80% of miscarriages can be associated or traced back to trisomy 13. And so we lost our oldest daughter at 19 days old. And we tried adoption and we tried everything. We knew we was going to try to have another family, another child, and We done that for 10 years, and man, nothing happened, nothing worked, nothing transpired. And so finally, I was running late for a wedding rehearsal, and I just out of the blue, wait a minute, I got rehearsal. I ran, grabbed a shirt and shoes, and was running out the door, and the phone rang, and I stopped because I thought, that's them calling, say, hey, where you at? And it wasn't. It was somebody else, and my wife just waved me on. I went to the wedding rehearsal, got everything taken care of, come home. My wife said, hey, that was your cousin, your cousin's wife, and her sister-in-law and her brother had separated, and she'd gotten pregnant while they were separated. And he said, I'll come home, but I'm not coming home to raise some other man's baby. And so they needed to adopt the baby out, and me and Mama were chosen and blessed with that child, and we raised Cassia, and our youngest daughter, Cassia, who was adopted. She was 22 years old whenever she was killed in an automobile accident about 5 years ago. At this taping is about 5 years ago. And so I've walked through that valley of death of a child. And usually whenever I am in contact with someone who has also lost a child, especially when they first lose a child, especially if it's an infant, we can immediately, bam, have a connection together, because they know I know their hurt. They know I know their pain. They know that I know and can relate to what happened to them. And because of that, you're in the same boat. You're in the same boat. You're at the same place where you can look at someone and begin to understand what they've been through. And whenever you're able to sit down with them and you tell them, hey, look, this family member of mine came into my bedroom and he raped me, or he fondled me, or he done whatever. And he did it every night for however long. He did it repeatedly. For years this happened. Or this was a one-time event. However much it was, you have that story that you can share and let them understand that they're not by themselves. How many years did you go through life thinking, I'm by myself and I can't tell anybody what happened to me because what will they think? Well, honey, let me tell you something. Whoever it is that you're trying to minister to is pretty much at that spot right now. They think that they have nowhere else to go. Nobody understands. Nobody's had this to happen to them. They're all by themselves. And that's just not the way it is. That's just not the way it is. I believe it's something like 80% of women are sexually abused before the age of 18. 80%. Wow. That's a bunch. That is a bunch of ladies who are out there, who think they're all by themselves in the same thing, and they're not. Once you start telling your story, and you start being able to connect, every time you tell your story over and over again, you begin to connect with different people. You begin to let them understand, hey, connect up, and you begin to say, hey, this happened to me too. They'll tell you, this happened to me too. The more you tell your story, the easier it gets, and the more healing comes to you because of your story that you tell. The more healing that you have. And every time that you begin to tell your story and you see somebody else be set free from their struggles, from their abuse, from their pain, whenever that you start doing that, it even becomes more apparent that you can help somebody else. In our drug and alcohol rehab thing, one of our proclamations is, I got to tell somebody what God has done for me. I got to tell somebody what happened in my life, what God has done for me. And because He's done it for me, He'll do it for you. At this taping, we're in the final stages of writing in our second book over women's, ministering to women's abuses, and along the lines of you're a picker, and it's got a long title. The title of it is, this next book we got coming out is called The Greatest Love That Anyone Ever Showed Her Was When Jesus Did Not Throw Rocks at Her. I call it No Rocks for short, but it's got such a long title. The greatest love anyone had ever showed her was when Jesus did not throw rocks at her. And it goes back to the woman at the well, Samaritan woman at the well, and begins to minister or talk about her life and the way it is relates to your life. And at the end of that book, I have a few chapters from some ladies who wanted to and who desired to. They begin to tell their story. In this You're a Picker book, one of the ladies, if you will remember, I told you about, it was a case study where the lady was 5 years old when her parents got divorced, and within about 5 to 10 days she had 5 different molesters. At 8, by the time she was 8 years old, she was a full-blown alcoholic. Her mother began to introduce her as the evil twin that killed her sister. On and on and on I could begin to go. That young lady's name is Tracy, and Tracy's story is at the end of my writing part over The Greatest Love, or No Rocks. And Tracy's a Christian now. She's living for God now. She's on her way to heaven, and we're just so proud of her and proud of the transformation that she has made. There's some other ladies there who begin to write down their story. It's their story in their own words, and whenever I get it all put together, we're going to publish it as that. This is Sally's story. This is this one's story, that one's story, that one's story. Here's what I wanted. The reason I'm telling you about this is because these ladies who wrote their story for me and said, you have my permission to use this in your book. These particular ladies who wrote their story for me, both, not just both of them, but the ones who began to write it and send it in to me, they began to tell me, as I began to write, the hate that was inside of me began to flow out of the end of that ink pen onto that paper. And as that hate flowed out of me, God just overshadowed me with some love and some forgiveness. And He began to overshadow me with peace, where there was despair, where there was upsetness, where there was frustration. All of a sudden, God's peace that passes all understanding began to just overflow me. And as I began to minister to these ladies in letting them write, we don't take everyone. We're not going to take everyone. We've had some, and it was kind of like, yeah, thank you, but no thank you. But there's others who we really felt impressed as we read their story that we need to put this in the book so that it can touch other people's lives. But the thing that got me was, as I wrote my story, hate flowed out of me, and God's peace replaced it. Everyone that's told me they've done that, that's exactly what happened to them. Is the hate left and peace came in. The forgiveness came as they began to tell their story. The forgiveness came in as they began to push it out and told someone. But preach, if I tell my story, it's going to destroy my whole family. Your whole family was destroyed anyway. How many others are in your family that was abused by the same person and nobody has said a word? One family that we counseled with, at one point, there was a daughter in the family, and that daughter came to her parents, and she told her parents that a particular family member had been touching her, fondling her, and she began to talk to them about, he had touched her underneath her clothing, and she began to share it with her mom and dad. And whenever her mom and dad began to make this a deal where we're like, okay, we're going to bring the family in, we're going to sit down and talk about this, another female cousin out of the family burst into tears because she said, he's been doing that to me for years. He's been doing that same thing to me for years. I thought it was just me, and I didn't think that I thought she was going to be safe. Oh, church, guys, listen to me. Listen to me. There's no telling how many in your own family has been molested by the exact same person. And I'm going to tell you the sad part. It will probably continue until somebody says, wait a minute, this happened to me. And when you say this happened to me, be ready, because there's probably going to be some others who will stand up and say, he did it to me too. He did it to me too. And ladies, it may be tough whenever that comes down, but it will set you free. Tell your story. Tell your story. Let other people begin to understand and realize what happened to you and what happened to them was not an isolated case. But hey, when you tell your story to some folk, look out. There's some folk going to come against you. There's some folk going to call you a liar. There's some folk going to tell you that you're just trying to destroy a good person. There's some folk going to tell you what a no good for nothing bum you are. Don't expect to be believed by everyone. Don't expect to be believed by a majority of the people. But understand that your story sets you free. The telling of your story sets you free. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you and praise you for the opportunity to have shared these videos with these ladies. Master, I ask you in the precious name of Jesus, just to reach out and touch each and every one of them, Lord. Begin to help them and lead them and guide them in the life that you have ahead. Lord, let them begin to come to that point where they understand that they are a picker. Let them understand, regardless of what has happened, the past cannot dictate what's going to happen to them in the future. And Lord, let them understand that they're your child. Lord, I ask you to let a healing process take place in every one of the ladies who have watched these videos. I ask you to let a healing emotionally, spiritually, physically, in every area and every phase of their life. God, I ask you to move and minister and bring a healing to each and every one of them in the precious name of Jesus. Lord, lift them up. Let them tell their story. Let them forgive. And let them begin to share with others so that others can be healed as well. We're going to give you the praise for it in Jesus' precious name. Amen and amen and amen. I know this is the longest video that we have done. And I have several questions, disgusting questions to throw out there. I'm sure that your leader will have some others. But what is God's grace to you in your life? How did God's grace come and what has it done for you? Do you plan on surviving your recovery, or are you going to let the same old thing just keep you right where you are? I hope you decide to survive. What steps do you plan on taking, and how do you plan to take those important steps, and especially the very first steps? What is your part in recovery? What do you have to do to have a successful recovery? What is keeping you from forgiving your abuser? Is there something there that keeps it from happening? Why can you not tell your story? This may be one of the biggest ones that I'm throwing out here. Why can't you tell your story? Is it still too painful? Is it still... discuss this in the group. You don't have to tell the details. You don't have to tell your story to tell why you can't. I can't tell it because it'll hurt too many people. I can't tell it because I'm not ready to deal with it. You don't have to tell what happened. What happened, or why can you not tell it? Is your ability to be a picker broken? And if your ability to be a picker is broken, I hope that these videos and the book helps you put that back together, and I hope that God just uses these videos in this book as a glue to fit the pieces back together. How do you plan on fixing that ability to become a picker again? And how do you plan on being a better picker? How do you plan on being a better picker? Thank you so very much for sitting at my kitchen table with me through these 13 videos. I hope they have been a blessing to you. I hope that they have ministered to you. I hope that you can say that you learned something from them, and I hope that you can turn around and tell your story. I hope that you can tell your story, and I hope that you can begin to reach other people and tell somebody what God has done for you and how God has set you free and how God has brought you back to the top of the mountain and how He has made you a picker. Until the next time we get together, may God richly bless you.